Hello, everyone, and welcome to our deep dive into VMware Cloud Foundation 9.0, scalable fleet management to achieve consistent and secure operations. Thanks, Simon and Anders, for this webinar. My name is Sehjung Ha in product marketing, and we have Andrew Firth in technical marketing, who is also presenting today. We're going to be joined by Sachin Alex as well as Kelsey Lemon on the panel. So we're excited to walk you through how VCF 9.0 changes the environment for platform engineers and cloud admins. And we're going to be talking about this new concept called fleet management, which we've not talked about before in the VCF 5.2 world, but it's a new 9.0 concept. So we're going to go into that in some details. And it's going to help you run your day-to-day work, especially when you're working with your vSphere and your vCenter and your VMware infrastructure in general. So what do the customers that we work with worry about? So they kind of worry about several different things. It depends on the persona, whether they're platform engineers or they're cloud admins. But basically, in today's fast-moving landscape, it's really hard for traditional operations to keep up. So let's look at some of the reality that our customer IT teams face today. So the platform engineer, their world revolves on keeping infrastructure running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. And they're constantly trying to verify the application metrics and performance and measuring how that's going. As well as the cloud admin, they're tasked with, defining the delivery plans as well as, the IT technologies while maintaining, cost controls and also having that visibility of what, the infrastructure they're building, whether it's virtual machines or Kubernetes pods, and how much that costs. And another challenge that, some of our customers have is, they are, building infrastructure for remote sites or for retail sites where there's multiple locations, and then being able to have, maybe potentially a lighter footprint, but then also being able to offer all the services that they might have also in the main data center. But consistently across all these different personas, there's always scaling and consistency challenges. So that's one of the key things where fleet management will help build that consistency, especially around a VMware Cloud Foundation environment. So in VCF 9.0, we introduced this concept of fleet management, and Andrew's going to go into a lot more details of what that is, but it's going to really help you move from like a manual component level management where you configure and set up things for like one vCenter at a time or a group of ESX hosts at a time. But then instead, with VCF 9.0, you can do it at a higher level, and to do it at what we call a fleet level, where you can push out changes or certain configurations that work across your entire VMware Cloud Foundation environment. And you're going to be leveraging VMware Cloud Foundation operations or VCF operations to do this. And there's multiple components that customers had to use before, but now it's all built into VCF operations. And we'll go into those details too. So we also have lifecycle management as part of fleet management, where we do fleet level upgrades as well as version control. And then with patching, you can actually patch hosts, and depending on the patch, you can actually minimize the downtime, and you can utilize capabilities like live patching that Andrew's going to talk about. And then in terms of identity and access, we also have, support for major identity providers, as well as capability to upgrade and renew certificates and also maintain the passwords that you use for your infrastructure. And even in terms of licensing with our fleet management capabilities in 9.0, we've really revamped that. So in terms of what we had before, we had licenses where every component had a license key, and each administrator had to monitor and manage all those license keys, and they're all individual. Maybe it was on a spreadsheet. But now it's all done by your license file. So once your entitlement is on the Broadcom support portal, there's a license file that gets downloaded into VCF operations, and the license usage is tracked by VCF operations. So that way, as you're building new hosts or new vCenters, it decrements from that secure license file that you have versus having to put a license key onto every piece of infrastructure you build. So, our engineering team and our product management teams, they've really rethought about how things are done in this VCF 9.0 and with fleet management. All these capabilities that used to take up a lot of time to manage your VMware infrastructure is now streamlined and much more efficient, and it makes a lot more sense as you're doing your day-to-day work. So some other things we've also done is we've looked at it in terms of how customers use VMware Cloud Foundation. So the things we're going to focus are on the left today. We're focusing on the infrastructure modernization part. Um, that's where you're building and also deploying your private cloud infrastructure, and then also optimizing it. So as you're doing your day two and you're running your infrastructure, what are the steps to improve the performance as well as optimize that? And then some other aspects of VMware Cloud Foundation, of course, are the application modernization and then the security modernization. But today we're going to mainly focus on the left side, which is the infrastructure modernization with fleet management. So VCF 9.0 was designed to fast track a lot of your potential initiatives. So in terms of easier day zero building, we have a VCF installer that has a lot of pre-checks. And that's the first step as you're trying to move from VCF 5.2 or just a la carte vCenter environment to a VCF environment. And then we're making it a lot easier with VCF operations as well as VCF installer. And then here you can also optimize the lifecycle management in terms of the upgrades as you're building the infrastructure for a VCF 9.0 environment. And some other capabilities where, in terms of modernizing your infrastructure, we allow you to build and deploy the infrastructure on premises, or as if you need, you can extend the data center to, sovereign clouds or other public clouds that are, certified by our partners running where you can use your capabilities of license portability to run VMware Cloud Foundation in other locations as well. So one key thing that's happened in 9.0 to make this a lot easier for you as you're managing this, if you're familiar with VMware before, we had multiple different business units, different products. So a lot of the engineering work in 9.0 was used to combine all those different components that you might have logged into VCF operations. So, things like SDC Manager, you can mainly manage that just within VCF operations now, and also SDC Lifecycle Manager. We used to have an ARIA Lifecycle Manager, as well as other capabilities like Skyline Diagnostics and Orchestrator, as well as logs. So all those things are being moved into VCF operations. So instead of having to do all these different tasks to manage your IT infrastructure or your VMware infrastructure, now you can just do all this in VCF operations. And one of the key things is fleet management, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But there's also fleet management, operations management, which is the traditional capabilities you had maybe with ARIA operations, for example. And then also security management, where we have a lot of capabilities like audit trails, so you can see who's making changes, for example, in your environment. So this is all now within the VCF operations umbrella. So one way we look at this is, so we have VMware Cloud Foundation, and VCF operations is one part of it. But with VCF operations, we work with VCF automation as well. But on the operations side, we're looking at it in terms of the build capabilities, where you're first setting up your VCF environment. Then today, we're going to talk about fleet management in detail, but you're going to hear about licensing, identity and access, lifecycle, certificates, passwords, and that also tags. And these are all fleet management capabilities where, you do certain things and then you can apply it to other areas of your infrastructure. So it helps you scale and become more efficient. Then there's also, in terms of VCF operations, we also have operations management, where we look at things like cost or health and diagnostics and other infrastructure operations, whether it's over the storage network or just the network or logging and other capabilities, as well as security management, where you get a dashboard of SecOps in terms of what's encrypted, what's not encrypted. But basically, with VCF operations, you can see all these things, and we've put a lot of effort into combining all these capabilities into one set of dashboards called VCF operations. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pass this over to Andrew, and he can cover the details, as well as he has three different demos where he's going to show you all the capabilities in fleet management.
Thanks very much for the intro, Sehjung, and thanks everyone for joining today. Um, so if you're managing a private cloud infrastructure, your day is often filled jumping between different consoles and tracking certificate expiry dates on spreadsheets, manually updating passwords across components, and just hoping for dear life that, nothing drifts out of compliance while you're focused on other tasks. Does this sound familiar? Well, VCF Fleet Management within VCF 9 helps you to transform these time-consuming and often error-prone tasks into automated centralized workflows. And this will save you time and also save your sanity as well. So take a quick glimpse at the agenda. We have quite a detailed session here today. Um, Before we start going deeper, though, I just want to start with a quick overview of fleet infrastructure at an architectural level. So fleet management in VCF is built upon the constructs of VCF fleet infrastructure. And it's really important to understand this first. So fleet infrastructure is the architecture. And fleet management, well, fleet management is something that we do at an operational level as a daily task as part of managing an environment. So at a VCF architectural level, I'll first define the terms VCF instances and VCF fleets. So the very first vSphere cluster of a VCF instance is configured as part of what we call the management domain. And this is used to host the management components. The SCDC manager appliance, which is used under the covers, is quite unique to VCF and it's deployed to the management domain. Now, additional workload domains can be created to scale the deployment. And each of these different workload domains is configured with their own vCenter and a single or a shared NSX instance. A VCF fleet, well, that consists of a one or more of these VCF instances and is managed by a single set of fleet level management components. The fleet management components include a single instance of VCF operations and a single instance of VCF automation. So these sit across the top here. So the VCF operations and the VCF automation instances, they can be used across all domains with a VCF instance and across one or more VCF instances in the fleet. And a VCF fleet can be deployed across a single region or a multi-region deployment. Then the next level, I guess, is what we call a VCF private cloud. And a private cloud is the highest level of management and consumption, and this is where you can actually have multiple VCF fleets. So that's the detailed view, simplistically. So we have clusters, and I think everyone's familiar with clusters. Clusters are managed by a vCenter, and they come under the construct of a VCF domain. So every domain will have its own separate vCenter. Then we have a VCF instance, which can comprise of multiple domains, and each with a single management domain. Then we have a VCF fleet, which can comprise of many VCF instances, which can be managed by a single deployment of VCF operations and VCF automation. And then we can have several VCF fleets, which come under the umbrella of a VCF private cloud. All right, so that's fleet level infrastructure. All right, so fleet management builds on the constructs of VCF fleet infrastructure. It allows customers to consistently deploy and scale and manage and operate their VCF environment centrally from the VCF operations console. And fleet management has been engineered for ease of use, and it's performed using workflows, so inbuilt workflows within VCF operations. And these workflows orchestrate a lot of commonly performed tasks. They simplify the process for admins to, very quickly configure their environments for use in their own enterprise, and then, of course, reconfigure and update them when they need to, which is inevitable, of course. But they can do this without any of the risks and any of the delays associated with, the manual configuration and change management. Now, so with VCF Fleet Management, admins can set up identity and access management. So that's using single sign-on for seamless access for users to VCF manager components. And these manager components being NSX Manager and VCF Automation, for example. Admins can also view and update security certificates for VCF appliances and ESX hosts in the environment. They can also perform lifecycle management. So lifecycle management of the patching and the upgrading of VCF components. And this includes managing the source for software downloads via either an online depot or an offline depot. And I'll go into more of that a little bit later on. We can also manage admin level passwords, and we can also set up tags. So this also comes under fleet management, as well as the ability to create configuration templates. And these configuration templates can be used to monitor and detect configuration drifts to keep your environments consistent and compliant. So many of our customers have been using VMware's operations management platform for well over a decade now. The inherent capabilities of VCF operations, which many of us know as VMware ARIA operations or even vRealize, it's changed names over the years. Well, this includes capacity, performance management, FinOps, troubleshooting, health and diagnostics, and much more. So most of us are quite familiar with those traditional capabilities. So today, we're not going to be focusing on these existing capabilities. What we'll be focusing on is fleet management, which from VCF 9 is included inside of VCF operations and is performed using this very same console. So once VCF 9 has been installed, admins can utilize fleet management in VCF operations to configure and customize their VCF fleet to best suit their own, unique needs and requirements. So from what you can see here, this is the home screen of VCF operations. Fleet management streamlines and simplifies a lot of operational tasks with orchestrated workflows. So inbuilt workflows that conveniently group related activities for very quick access. So let's dive deeper, starting with identity and access management. So how many times a day do you authenticate to different systems? So, you're going between vCenter, NSX, you've got VCF automation, VCF operations. Well, VCF single sign-on gives your team a unified authentication experience across all of the VCF components. So this way you can log in once and you're good to go. It's not just convenient, it's also a security improvement too, because SSO also reduces password fatigue and it also strengthens protection against unauthorized access. The system works with your existing identity infrastructure as well as traditional directory services, and you get centralized identity management across your fleet, and your users get a much better experience. So that's a win-win. So single sign-on and identity access in VCF are configured at a VCF fleet level. So its purpose is to provide secure access and authentication services across your VCF components. Identity and access management in VCF follows this design. So firstly, we have integration with a variety of externally managed identity providers and directory services. So this provides the authentication and the identity assertion for users and groups. And then the identity provider is customer managed. All right. So this identity provider connects to your SCDC components via the VCF identity broker. All right. So this is a VCF component, the VCF identity broker. And this is provisioned into Cloud Foundation. The VCF identity broker enables single sign-on and it streamlines the authentication across different SCDC components. The third component of this design uses VCF single sign-on, so SSO, to provide centralized authentication, identity federation, and user management across your VCF instances. So how does it all work? Well, we'll first start with the configuration of VCF single sign-on. So as part of a VCF 9 deployment, each VCF component is initially deployed to use its own authentication source for management. So to be clear, single sign-on across VCF components is not configured as part of the initial deployment process. This is something you do after deployment. To strengthen security and streamline user access, VCF SSO can be configured as a post-deployment operation. So VCF SSO provides an improved experience for users who can log in once and then gain that seamless level of access to manage VCF components based upon what they've been granted access to. And we'll go into that a little bit deeper in the demo. VCF Operations also provides an inbuilt workflow to enable VCF single sign-on, which simplifies and speeds up setup and integration. The VCF components can use different sets of authentication protocols, such as SAML 2.0 and OIDC. So how does SSO work in VCF? Well, as part of the workflow to set up SSO, we also set up a second component, and that's what I alluded to before, the VMware Identity Broker, otherwise known as VIDB. Now, VIDB brokers the connection between VCF components and an externally managed identity provider or directory service. And VCF supports several different identity providers, which use either modern or directory-based authentication mechanisms. So modern identity providers, these include Okta, Microsoft ADFS, Microsoft Entra ID, Ping, and any other generic SAML 2.0 provider. The directory-based services can be configured either using Active Directory LDAP or Open LDAP. So once VCF SSO is enabled, VCF components are configured as OIDC clients, which connect to VIDB. Now, to complete the configuration of SSO, an admin then assigns access to SSO users or groups for each VCF management component. So this process is performed as a secondary step from the management console of each VCF component. Once again, this will be clearer in the demo. And then from here, users can then be assigned specific roles and granted management access. So by assigning users and group access, admins can ensure VCF components are secure and compliant. So let's just take a look at the workflow. And in this example, we're going to set up VCF for use with Active Directory, all right, which is what many of our customers are using. All right, so here's just a quick demo that I've created. This is the VCF operations console. So this is where everything is now done in VCF 9. We're just going to log in. We're just going to log in locally as an admin here initially. This is the console. So this is our home screen or one of our home screens. Fleet management, you can see here is on the left. We're going to configure identity and access management. So these are all the different components here for configuring single sign-on, and there are a number of different prerequisites that we need to put in place as well to ensure that that everything is smooth. All right, so you take a read of that. Here we're looking at the different tiers within a fleet. So we have our VCF instances. This particular VCF instance is called VCF Instance 1, all right, which is pretty self-explanatory. All right, and this is the workflow. So we start with choosing the identity broker, so the VIDB that we deploy. All right, and there are two different ways of doing this. We can deploy it as an embedded identity broker as part of the management domain vCenter server, or for larger environments, we recommend actually using the identity broker appliance. But because this is a lab, we're just going to go with the embedded model. We'll hit next. We can see here that our second step is to configure the identity provider. All right, so as I mentioned, we have uh, a selection of different modern identity providers. All right, once again, these are all externally managed or directory-based identity providers, also externally managed. And in this case, because Active Directory is so popular, we're just going to showcase that one. So I'll click on Active Directory here. We'll hit next. We'll hit to go and configure this. We configure it with a directory name, and we configure all of our environmentals for Active Directory. So the primary domain controller, the base DN, the bind username, and the bind user password. So all in Active Directory. Uh, all right, so we hit next. This is just a quick summary of what we're doing. We then hit finish. All right. And then our third step is then to configure our users and group provisioning. All right. So we're configuring this to connect to all of our Active Directory accounts. But then what we need to do is then align all this to our VCF components. All right. So we do that. And then the third step after this is then assign roles to those particular accounts. All right. So baby steps. Let's just hit the next button. This is what we're doing. So here we're going to assign the Active Directory attributes that are relevant to our particular deployment. All right, so we're going to hit employee ID there. We hit next. Here we're selecting our existing Active Directory groups that we have configured in our environment. So once again, using the base group DN name, we go through, we can search using a particular name. So in this pre-canned example here, we can see we've got a number of groups. Okay, so we've got group 0 and we also have a nested group. So we're going to select both of those. Now, in addition to um, configuring groups for access, we can also go in and configure individual users as well. Or in this case, we're going to do both. All right, so once again, we're putting in our base user DN. We have a search option, and we're going to select users 4 and 5 here in this example. All right, we hit next on that. Here's just a summary. So we're um, configuring two different Active Directory groups, two different users, and we hit finish. Then we're done and we're finished with the setup. But as I mentioned, there are a couple of little things that we need to do after this. Obviously, you go in and adjust all of your backups, but what we now need to do is assign particular roles to these accounts. So, for example, um, one of those users we may assign a role as being an admin. So when they log into any of these consoles, they may have admin level access. Once again, you can choose the level of access depending on the console. All right, so what we'll do here very quickly is we'll go into VCF operations, which is what we're in here now, and we're going to um, configure VCF operations for single sign-on. So when we log in, instead of just having that local admin that we logged in to before, we'll have an SSO option for a user to come in and sign in with their own user credentials. All right, so we'll configure that. It's just prompting us here that we need to assign a role to that user. All right, so to do that, we're going into the control panel. Just very quickly, I'll show you that you can see here that we have now successfully set up VCF SSO, which is good. But yeah, we'll go into the control panel. We'll go into access control here. We'll go and select our particular groups. And what we're going to do now is import this group, all right, into this particular environment. So once again, we can do a search. We'll select the groups that we want. All right. Then we'll go in and assign the particular role. So we've imported the group. Now we're assigning the roles. We're just going to give this particular, these groups and this user admin level permissions. We assign that, we hit save, and we're done. All right. So just remember, we're logged in as the administrator right now. Okay. We're going to log out and we're going to test it. See if it works. All right, so now we have this new option, login method VCF SSO. So we didn't have that before. It was local. It was a local account. So we're going to select that. It then prompts us for our SSO user account. So we'll log in with that. And here we go. We've got access into VCF operations and we're an admin. Okay. So yeah, all done. So that's how you configure that. Just to be sure, we can see here that we're logged in as the user. All right. So now we're not quite finished yet. What we're going to do now is configure the vSphere client as well. Um, so we're logging here with SSO. Let's go into admin, look at our global permissions. I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, so going to select our particular domain and our group. So we'll do a quick search. I'm going to give it the admin role. This is for vCenter. We'll hit OK. Noting we're still logged in as the administrator. We're going to log out now. And we can now see that we have the option to log in using our own account. Okay, which is a lot more secure, a lot more compliant, it's auditable, etc. Okay, so we can see here that we are logged in with that user. All right, so let's go back to the slides. All right, and so here's a scenario that probably makes many of you break into a cold sweat. All right, so just imagine this: it's 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, and critical services are down, and that may be because of an expired certificate. But you didn't know that at first, right? So firstly, you're probably frantically searching through different systems to find that A, it is an expired certificate, and then what you're trying to do is then trying to figure out which component has failed, and then, how to remediate the issue. So you're under a lot of pressure, right? So VCF 9, it puts an end to this, potential nightmare. Um, and that's because we have centralized certificate management, which can be deployed and managed across your entire VCF fleet. So you get complete visibility into the certificate status for every VCF component. There's also certificate order renewal, and plus you also get proactive alerting about expiring certificates, so there are no more surprises in the future. So let's go a little bit deeper. So certificate management within VCF helps to prevent these security breaches and service outages caused by these expired or misconfigured or vulnerable certificates. And this is critical for connected applications, service, and devices. So administrators, they have full visibility of VCF components across the entire VCF fleet, and they can completely view and manage the certificate status and the certificate type configured for each VCF component. And this is all done through VCF operations. To simplify management, certificates can be viewed and filtered at different levels. So you can view and filter them at a VCF fleet level, a VCF instance level, a domain level, or at even a VCF component level. So yeah, pretty solid capability that we have there. Now VCF 9 in particular, well, because we have had certificate management in the past, it introduces a completely revamped certificate management experience. So it brings both the infrastructure and the management components under one umbrella. The VCF Operations Console provides visibility of certificate information and also the status of each VCF component. So certificate status for each VCF component, they can be shown as active, disconnected, or expiring. We also have proactive alerting. So this provides timely notifications about expiring certificates and upcoming renewals. And this helps to further minimize the potential disruptions caused when certificates expire. So when initially deploying VCF, each component is assigned a certificate from a default signing certificate authority. Now, it's good practice to replace your default self-signed certificates for the management domain components with a trusted enterprise CA signed certificate. And this can help you, provide secure access to all of your VCF components. And VCF provides several different options to be able to do this for replacing self-signed certificates using, once again, a lot of pre-built workflows. And these pre-built workflows make everything quite simple, quick, and easy. So you can configure an integrated Microsoft CA, an integrated OpenSSL CA, or a third-party CA. So, these are also supported when managing outside of VCF. So admins also have the option to generate certificate requests with external CAs. So with the CA in place, the administrator can generate certificate signing requests and then replace the self-signed certificates with signed CA certificates. And VCF Operations also provides a workflow to manually renew certificates of VCF components. So you can manually renew all of your TLS certificates for components that have VMCA, Microsoft CA, OpenSSL, or self-signed certificates. Manually renewing your certificates if your certificate is signed by a third-party CA. And signed certificates can also be imported. So we'll see all these options in just a moment, along with, the ability to activate automatic certificate renewal. So we'll see all that in the demo shortly, or in, some of the screenshots that I have here. So let's just have a quick look at some of these workflows. So let's look at the workflow for actually configuring this CA and updating all of the certificates. Um, so a VCF operator can complete this process in just three simple steps. So the first step that you see here is to configure VCF. So, configure VCF for a certificate authority. And we have inbuilt options to include Microsoft CA or OpenSSL. After you configure the certificate authority in VCF operations, you can then generate a certificate signing request, which is step two. And then you wait until the CSR is successfully generated before performing to the third step, which is to replace an existing certificate for a Cloud Foundation component with a CA certificate. All right. So let's take a look at what this looks like through the UI. So you can see you've got an inbuilt workflow to configure a certificate authority, which I've highlighted here in orange. Um, the purpose of having a certificate authority, of course, is to act as a trusted third party. So a CA issues digital certificates for secure and encrypted communication. A CA, by definition, does this by verifying the identity of an organization or a server or an individual, and then it digitally signs their public key with the CA's own private key. And this in turn allows others to trust the public key. The public key genuinely belongs to the applicant, and it creates a chain of trust, like a hierarchy. So VCF provides options to configure a Microsoft CA or use OpenSSL. And when using Microsoft CA, it'll need to be configured in advance prior to configuring it for VCF operations. So you basically just put in all of the Microsoft CA details there. Or if you're wanting to configure it for OpenSSL, the process is really simple. Once again, hit configure CA, and with OpenSSL, there are actually not many prerequisites for actually configuring it. So you just configure it this way. So they look a little bit different in terms of configuration, but you get a similar outcome in the end. Now, once you configure your CA, VCF Operations provides additional workflows to generate a certificate signing request for a VCF component. Once again, you just put in those details. They're unique to your particular environment, and then you're off. And then the final step is to replace an existing certificate with your externally signed CA certificate. So again, process is all nicely automated through this workflow in VCF operations, which you can see here, really helps to make certificate management far less onerous. And, in fact, certificate management through VCF is actually really quite simple. All right. VCF 9 also includes a new certificate auto renewal feature, which is really cool. So yeah, new to VCF 9. It's used to replace certificates for VCF components when a certificate is nearing its expiration date. So this capability allows, admins to, avoid a lot of the challenges of managing certificate renewals manually, and also prevents disruption if a certificate is about to expire. So it supports the renewal of certificates created using Microsoft CA or OpenSSL. All right, so it's really quick and easy to implement. It's basically just a little toggle switch there that you switch over. And once you do that, yeah, basically once it's enabled um, to both the VCF management and the infrastructure components, certificates are auto-renewed 60 days prior to their expiry date. So yeah, another really cool feature there. All right, so let's switch gears and we'll talk about password management. And we've all been there. Like many of us, you may have admin credentials scattered across all of your different ESX hosts, vCenter servers, NSX managers, and SDDC manager. And when it comes time to update or rotate those passwords, you're either manually updating each component one by one, which is crazy, or you're scrambling to find that password that you swear that you've documented somewhere, but you can't find. So with VCF 9, you have centralized password management. So you can view, you can update, and remediate passwords for all of your break glass admin accounts. And you can do all that from one console from VCF operations. You can also even schedule automatic password rotation and get alerts before passwords expire. So going a bit deeper, so at the time of initial deployment, the VCF installer allows you to specify your own passwords, or you can auto-generate passwords for each component. Now, after deployment, you can use a VCF operations console to manage your passwords for VCF components across your entire fleet. So password configuration for VCF management components can also be viewed and filtered in a number of different ways. So you can view it at a fleet level, at an instance level, domain, or even component level. And when you do that, you can see the component name, the appliance FQDN, the username, the account type, the credential type, the password status, so whether it's active or disconnected, and obviously the password expiry date too. So within VCF operations, you have the ability to manage these break glass admin accounts. You can update passwords in case they are forgotten. You can remediate passwords. So remediation means by synchronizing them back if they've been changed outside of VCF, for example. You can also eliminate password rotations as well of VCF service accounts because all the VCF service accounts are rotated internally. So this integration with VCF operations also means that admins can receive alerts too. So in this way, they can get advance warning when passwords are about to expire, which help to improve security and reduce, the likelihood of downtime. But wait, there is one more feature I want to discuss. Um, Admins can also use the SCDC manager to rotate passwords for VCF components and schedule automatic rotation in advance. So during rotation, SCDC manager generates a randomized password based upon the component password policy that you set, and it reestablishes any component integrations. Worthy of note, it is always best to plan a maintenance window to avoid any service disruptions if you are rotating passwords for multiple accounts. All right, so that takes us on to another capability within VCF fleet management, and that's configuration drift. And configuration drift is one of those silent problems that can often build up. They creep up on you over time. You may have someone make a quick change here, another adjustment there at a later time, and before you know it, your very carefully planned infrastructure configuration can look quite messy, like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. So tracking these changes manually is often really tedious, and it's almost impossible to scale if you're not on top of it. So VCF 9's configuration drift detection uh, built into VCF operations. It works to help prevent these changes from going unnoticed. So configuration management allows you to create configuration templates, and I'll show you one of those in a minute. You create the templates for your vCenter instances and your clusters. The system then monitors your environment and alerts you when any of these configurations drift out of their desired state. And their desired state, yes, all of this, this is user defined. All right. So this means that you can ensure that your environment will remain consistent and compliant. And you can do this at scale across your entire VCF fleet. All right. So it takes away, all of the manual tracking and Excel spreadsheets and things that you may have had in the past. Configuration drifts show configuration changes at a point in time, and it compares them to desired values. And it's all proactive. So it's a proactive form of management instead of, having that reactive, firefighting type of approach. All right, so best way to showcase how all this works is to once again jump into a demo. So this is the second demo that we have here. Once again, we're logging into VCF operations. Okay, you can see here, we'll just expand fleet management. We'll go into configuration drifts. We'll expand the view here. So we have a VCF instance. In this case, the VCF instance is called VCF instance 1. All right. Now this is a vanilla environment, so there's nothing here. We're going to create a configuration template. All right. Now in this case, we're going to create a template to monitor changes for NTP, all right, and SSH. All right, so we're creating this. We're going to call it SSH and NTP, put a bit of a description in there, and we're going to select a source vCenter server, all right, which will be our source server to configure what we want to be our, our desired template. All right, and then we can use that particular source server and then apply this configuration template across a VCF fleet. All right, so we'll hit next here. This is pretty cool. This is very, very granular. We can go down here and we can choose what we want to monitor. So in this case, I'm selecting SSH and I'm also going to select NTP. You can also see it here, kind of written in code if you don't want to use the UI. I think this is actually quite easy to manage. We hit create. And that's it. All right, that's our configuration template. Now, what I'm going to do, what we then need to do after we configure the template is that we actually need to assign the vCenters to the template. All right, so you can choose to assign one or more vCenters to a particular template. You may have another template that may only be specific to another vCenter or set of clusters. You get to choose how you build that out. All right, so in this case, we're assigning it. All right, and we've assigned it to, in this environment, we only have one domain, so this particular vCenter. Now, what I'm going to do now is we're going to actually go in and edit the policy. So we set this up initially for SSH to be enabled, all right, and NTP. I'm going to go in and now edit the policy and show what it looks like. And we can just edit this manually, all right? But we're going to change the policy so that SSH is now not enabled. All right, so I'm going to hit save. All right, so that's our new policy. And remember, we've already applied this policy already to a vCenter server. So I'm going to go in here and we'll go back down to the instance. All right, can't see anything that's changed yet. Okay, so we might just need to give it a little bit of a poke. We'll go into drifts. All right, we'll select our vCenter server and we'll actually hit detect drift. All right, and bingo. Okay, we can see that we have detected a drift. Let's go in and have a look. And there it is. All right, so this is the current value that is set to this vCenter server. This is the desired value that we've configured for the template. All right, you can see they're different. True in red, false in green. So from here, this just gives administrators a way to actually, track their changes, and then they can go in and make those and remediate the environment to suit. Now, what we can also do is set up and schedule drift detection. Okay, so you can schedule this to happen daily or weekly or at any time you like. So in this case, let's just set it up. Um, we set up weekly or maybe daily. We drag the vCenter instance across. Once again, you may have more than one. All right, we'll just hit next on these. In this case, we're running this daily, okay? And we create, and yes, we can see that it's going to run here daily. All right, so that's your schedule. There are also a few other things that you can look at in here as well. You can look at you can generate reports. You can look at the history, and you can also look at the particular jobs that you have. So once again, you can have many different configuration templates, and you can configure jobs to run at different times. All right, to go back to the home screen of VCF operations and look, you can actually see that from the main dashboard, we can actually see that we have a drift there in place. All right, so that's configuration drift. All right, and we'll move on to tag management. All right, so categories and tags can be used within VCF to describe specific features or characteristics in an environment. So both the categories and the tags, they're user defined. All right, so they allow operators to attach labels to objects in a Cloud Foundation inventory, which makes them much easier to search and sort. So here we have some examples I came up with for some different categories and tag types. As I said, these are user defined. All right, so you can create these to suit all of your own requirements and use cases. Um, to group related tags together and manage them at scale. You first create this category, all right, and then once the category is created, you can then add one or multiple tags to the category. All right, so an operator can then assign the tag values to objects in the inventory, and we'll see how this works. We'll see how this plays out. All right, so prior to VCF 9, categories and tags are being created using the vSphere client. But from VCF 9, categories and tags can now be created using VCF operations, which brings things in and just makes things a little bit easier to manage. So this capability allows categories and tags to be easily created and pushed across different workload domains in a VCF instance and also across VCF fleets. All right, so once again, this is all fleet level. So for example, if you need to tag inventory objects based upon service levels, you'd first create a category named SLA, and then you'd specify the inventory items that apply to it. So you could have a single tag or multiple tags that can be added to a category. So in this example, you can see here, um, an operator, you could have tags created for gold, silver, and bronze. Um, for a category defined as service level. All right. And you can align these to different service levels you have in your environment. So after the category and the tag are created, the operator then can choose the vCenter environment to push them to. The operator can then assign a tag to an object using the vSphere client. So in this example, an operator is assigning the tag silver, um, which represents a particular service level, to a particular vSAN data store. And then once the tags have been assigned, operators can then use the VCF operations console to view tagged objects on the vSphere client, to view or search or sort inventory objects based upon their category or their tag name. All right, so VCF operations has the ability to import categories and tags created within a vCenter environment into VCF operations. So if you have multiple different vCenter environments and you've got different tags and categories created, you can actually bring them all in and help centralize them. All right. So it's quite easy to set up. VCF operations, contains some inbuilt features to import these categories and tags from connected vCenter server instances. So this way, they you can manage all of your different workload domain and environments and your clusters using a consistent set of categories and tags across your entire VCF fleet. So the operator selects the VCF domain where the categories and tags are to be imported from, and then they can select which inventory objects they'd like to assign to the category and the tags. And then VCF operations allows the operators to push centrally managed categories and tags out to other vCenter instances. So yeah, a pretty cool capability there. All right, so let's talk about lifecycle management. Now, lifecycle management is a very big topic in VCF. Um, I'm just going to present a little condensed view and use a particular example of an ESX live patch, just to give you a bit of a taste of it. But if you want to learn more about lifecycle management, there are some separate sessions that will going on, discussing, updating all of the components and also doing a full upgrade. So we're not going to discuss that today. This will be more of a condensed cut down version. So the whole premise around lifecycle management is to make the lifecycle of all of your components within VCF as easy as possible. And lifecycle management in VCF has been designed to streamline updates, upgrades, and patching exercises across an entire VCF fleet. So once again, we're taking all this beyond just a VCF instance, and this is all now VCF fleet level. And having a centralized approach simplifies management while enhancing system resiliency. So it actually helps to reduce risks associated with manual errors and any inconsistencies and configuration drift, for example. So VCF operations through vSphere Lifecycle Manager provides a centralized platform to streamline lifecycle management, and it simplifies the process, making it much more efficient. So once again, the common theme here with VCF is that we have a lot of inbuilt workflows, and these inbuilt workflows ensure that each component is consistently updated. It minimizes vulnerabilities and enables you to maintain a stable environment. And by standardizing and automating all of these processes, lifecycle management reduces the likelihood of system managers and human error. We also have proactive monitoring and regular backup and restore capabilities, which then further contribute to how resilient VCF can be. So lifecycle management in VCF fosters a resilient data center environment by automating and centralizing all of these updates. It helps you to ensure consistency and reduce operational tasks. All right, so let's take a bit of a deeper look. So VCF operations, provides centralized management of the full upgrade and patching process across the VCF private cloud. And this includes both the VCF fleet level management components, which we've discussed, and the instance level core components. Now, updates for VCF component, um, so the components, the binaries themselves, they're released on a regular basis, and they can be downloaded using the online depot or the offline depot, depending on how you configure it. So when using the offline depot, a proxy server can be used, for example. So it'll give you a little bit of extra added security. Now it provides um, notifications. So from within VCF operations, you'll get a notification when a new update is available. So you can download that update, which is applicable to the specific environment that you're running. The VCF operations also includes an inbuilt planner. Okay, so allows updates to be reviewed and planned before you actually go in and remediate your environment. So you can get a pretty good understanding of the scope of the upgrade, as well as the order in which particular updates can be applied to. All right, so a pre-check can then be run. So a pre-check is run prior to installing an update. So the pre-check, that actually helps to ensure that all of the components being upgraded are healthy and optimal first. So they can be run across a new VCF target version. All right, so you can say, all right, I want to go from VCF 9.0 to 9.0.1, for example. Or you can actually even do a general update readiness pre-check. So this is when you're not actually planning on actually doing the upgrade, but it will go through the process of, okay, well, is my environment healthy and is it actually ready for an upgrade in the future? So you have those options there too. You can then choose to schedule the update. So you can schedule the update to run at a particular time. And you can also, um, that may, align with your update window. And you can also apply the update at a per cluster level, which can be run sequentially, or you can also apply the updates in parallel at the same time. So you could choose different clusters or different workload domains across your environment. Choose some to upgrade on a Monday at 2 a.m. in the morning, and others perhaps at a later time. So you've got a lot of flexibility there. While the updates are running, you can monitor and patch them. Sorry, monitor. Um, them in real time, and you can also, get reports. You can generate reports on the whole process. So that's lifecycle management. Um, I'm going to quickly show you one last demo, which I think um, helps put lifecycle management in a good light. Once again, as I said, it's a big area, lifecycle management. In this particular example, I'm going to show you the process of applying a ESX live patch. All right, and we'll see how easy that is. So once again, we're in VCF operations. We go down to lifecycle. We expand our VCF instances. And in this particular environment, our VCF instance is called prod. All right, so we'll open that up. We can see here that we're running 9.0. All right, we have a big green tick, which looks good. We can see our depots. So the depot is configured when you first deploy VCF. So you can see here, this has been deployed with the offline depot. All right, so that's good. We'll go into binary management. We can see here, okay, out of all of our components, everything's running at 9.0 level. All right, so everything looks pretty green and healthy there. We can see here that we have a patch, so an ESX patch, all right, that we can apply. Now, we all know that if we're applying a patch, we need to update the image for ESX. So from within VCF operations, we can now do that. So we don't need to go into the vSphere client as such. It's all integrated. So we hit on image management. We can choose to import the existing 9.0 image, so the original image that we had. So we import that in. Okay, we log in once again. Just a subtle note here, we're logging in with an SSO user here. We go to create the image. So the image will be based upon the 9.0 image, but we'll update it for this 9.0.0.1, which contains this patch. All right, so we select the version. This is the actual live patch itself, so ending in 008. All right, we're going to create a new image, so we'll just call this live patch 9.0.1. All right, we hit save. We then import this in. So we're importing this image into VCF operations, all right, which we've called live patch. We go into our workload domain. Now, in this case, in this environment, we have two workload domains. We have the management domain and workload domain 01. And just for this example, we'll mix things up a bit. We're going to apply this ESX live patch to workload domain 01. Now, there's a pre-check that we can run, all right? Um, we always recommend that you run a pre-check. Before we do that though, in this particular example, I'm gonna show you the update planner. So by hitting the plan patching tab here, I can go in, I can select ESX because that's what I'm going to be updating to. And look, I can actually see the new version. All right, so this is the new version of the image. All right, so you validate selection. And what the validation does is that it's just going to check that everything looks okay. All right, before we then go in and actually start the process of applying the patch. So we hit done, we'll hit configure update. Now this will actually, so it's actually detected that we should actually run a pre-check. All right, the pre-checks are not always mandatory. We always recommend them. But in this particular case, it wants to do a pre-check. So we'll let that happen. We'll do a pre-check. We'll select a particular environment that we want. Okay. We'll hit next on that, next on that. Okay, we are going to enforce the live patch. Now, a live patch, for those who aren't familiar, a live patch is, and not all patches are marked as live, but a live patch can be applied to ESX or even NSX um, to a host without requiring a reboot. So it uses what we call partial maintenance mode, which is a new capability, a new vSphere capability. It enables us to apply the updates without doing a reboot. So we are going to enforce the live patch here. We'll hit next. We'll run the pre-check. This will take a little while. Obviously, we've sped this up because this is a simulation. All right, there are no issues found with the pre-check, which is great. We can then go in and schedule the update. All right, so we'll go in here. We have an option of being able to upgrade now or schedule the update. In this case, we're going to upgrade now. We tick the box to say that we've reviewed all of the hardware compatibility and compliance, and we let the update run. All right, so this will take a little bit of time depending on how large your environment is. As you can see that it's kind of running. Um, just to show you what's going on behind the covers, you don't need to do this, but we can see here the different hosts going into partial maintenance mode while this ESX live patch is being applied. All right, so that's good. So that's finished. Let's go back into VCF operations. All right, so we can see it's just completed here. All green ticks, which is good. We'll close out of that. And now we can see that in workload domain 01, of which we had two clusters, we can see now that all hosts are running on that version. So the 9.0001 with that patch level ending in 008. All right, so we'll end that particular demo there. So that's lifecycle management. So look, it gives you a bit of a taste for some of the capabilities of what VCF fleet management is and what it can do. There are a number of additional resources that you can look at. So by all means, take a photo of the QR code there or a screenshot of these links. Um, there's a documentation page. There are a whole heap of blogs which are being updated and added to pretty much on a daily basis. For those who want to get hands-on, there are the hands-on labs, and these have all been updated for 9.0. For those who want to build their own smaller nested environments, there's Holodecks, so take a look at the Holodeck link there. And then there are a whole heap of different FAQs and YouTube videos and the VCF poster. So, yeah, on behalf of Sehjung and myself, I'd like to thank you for joining today. And if there are any questions that's outstanding, we can answer those in the Q&A.
That's great, Andrew. Yeah, those demos really brought everything to life, and it's great to see, lots of reasons to adopt VCF 9.0. If you're running VCF 5.2 or if you're just running vSphere 8.x, with fleet management, there's definitely lots of efficiency capabilities that will help you in your day-to-day work. Thanks.